Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto got abandoned by Team 7 after accident in Chunin exam part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki was hurt, both emotionally and physically. Pain like this wasn't anything new to him, he had experienced it all his life. This was, however, the first time he had felt so betrayed. He was currently laying on his stomach bleeding out in the forest of death with wound going from his right shoulder midway down his torso. Both his teammates had abandoned him after they had run into Orochimaru of the Sannin. Things with his team had been strained ever since the mission to Wave. Sakura had spent every available moment trying to get Sasuke's attention. Sasuke himself had become even more isolated and cold after he gained his Sharingan. The month leading up to the Chunin exams should have been a warning that things had soured to this point. Even Kakashi-sensei had been ignoring both him and Sakura and instead, had been training Sasuke with his newly awakened Sharingan, and no matter how much he complained he had always pushed him aside, promising that once he had better control of his chakra he would help him train more. Damn it, my vision's going blurry, thought Naruto as his surroundings started to blur together as he tried to crawl himself to the underside of a nearby tree so he wouldn't be completely defenseless. Naruto thought back to the encounter with Orochimaru and how utterly outclassed he had been even when using the Nine Tails chakra. His instincts were screaming at him to run away from the snake Sannin, but he had foolishly ignored them. He at the time, still harbored hope he and his team could reconnect. Damn them, thought Naruto angrily. First Sasuke uses me for a substitution after the snake freak put that weird seal on me, then Sakura leaves me after the bastard ran away. Naruto rolled into a small opening under a random tree and with the last of his strength used a branch to cover the entrance to hide as much as possible. Soon Naruto sees the world go black as he finally passes out from blood loss. Drip, drip, drip. Naruto could hear water slowly dripping as he sat himself up into what he could only describe as a sewer. Naruto looked around, his blue eyes sharp and cautious, something that most would say didn't belong on his face. He spotted a giant gate behind him with different pipes leading into it, then he heard a low rumble that sounded like a chuckle. The water moved slightly as he saw a massive figure behind the gate. So my jailer finally comes to meet me. It only took you to be slowly dying in the middle of a forest. Naruto saw the 9 titanic tails swaying behind the beast and spoke in a soft whisper. The 9 tails, the giant fox lowered itself to look at his container, his eye bigger than Naruto's entire body. Naruto felt oddly calm as he stared at the mountain-sized fox as it stared at him. My, I didn't know you were so observant, little human. I expected you to be more moronic. The 9 tails let out another chuckle as he mocked the blonde. His breath disturbed the water slightly with every breath. Naruto had to bite back a retort. He wanted to scream at the dumb fox that he wasn't a moron, but his instincts were telling that would be a bad idea. And knowing that last time he ignored them he ended up bleeding out in the middle of a deadly forest filled with not only wild beasts but also enemy ninja. Naruto swallowed before responding, "You're right, I haven't been the most studious ninja." Naruto remembered when he first started to tune the world out, the harsh words of the villagers that would haunt him during the nights as he slept. He also remembered when he started using a mask so obnoxiously happy to hide away his fears, his anger, his hate. He didn't know when the mask he wore became his actual face, but in the end, it had come to bite him in the ass. Naruto looked up and for a split second, he thought he could see sympathy in the eyes of the fox before a hard, unreadable look came to its eyes. "I assume we're in the seal, so how long do I have? You said I was dying." The 9 tails looked at the blonde before he let out a long breath. "You assume correctly, jailer of mine. We are indeed in my cage." The fox paused before continuing. "Time moves slower in here when I want it to, so we have time before we need to be concerned about your injury. I see you've decided to drop that idiotic mask of yours. Naruto looked surprised. The fox knew that before nodding slowly. Yeah, I figured it was time to start being me again. I forgot myself trying to win the attention and approval of the villagers that I let my mask become my face. Good. The nine tails boomed suddenly. I can't have my container looking like such a weak idiot. I may be sealed away, but you still represent me by proxy. The snake put a seal on you that has severely cut our connection. The nine tails suddenly brought a tail forward and sent a wave of chakra to his container. That is as much that I can send until this new seal is removed. Go talk to the old Hokage, he should be able to remove it for you. Naruto looked up at the nine tails in surprise. Why are you helping me? Questioned Naruto. Don't you go free if I die. When the fourth sealed me in you, he invoked the power of the god of death. I do not wish to test to see if I would reform if I were to perish with you. The nine tails looked at his container again. You humans may call me a demon, but I can assure you I am not. I am not so cruel as to watch a child die without doing anything. Naruto said nothing as he looked away with a soft whisper. Thank you. Naruto looked back up at the fox before he spoke again. I promise I won't be weak anymore. Naruto then felt a small pull in his navel. You're waking up. Remember that you're not only representing yourself, but you're also representing me. Before you go use those shadow clones to train yourself. Everything they learn you learn too. The nine tails said as he laid down. Now be gone, your dying has interrupted my nap. Naruto looked on as he felt himself leave. Thank you again, I know you didn't have to help me. Naruto whispered before he left the seal completely. Naruto felt himself come to and he looked around. He was still under the tree and his wound was mostly healed. It was now an ugly scar that ran across his chest. His orange and blue jacket was torn to shreds, so Naruto took parts of it to make some makeshift bandages for himself. He still felt exhausted, so Naruto quickly got more branches from the outside and fortified his little cubby. The sun hung low, but it would be a couple of hours before night. Naruto took advantage of the little daylight he had left and managed to fill his canteen from a nearby river and was lucky enough to grab a fish to eat for the day. He wanted to make the fire now as to not draw attention to himself at night while he was still so weak from the encounter with the snake Chunin. Naruto spent the next 3 hours slow cooking the fish as to not draw any teams to himself with a large fire, and as soon as night fell he ate his fish and went back inside the tree to think of his next move. I need to find my team, he thought to himself sarcastically. The fastest way out of this failed experiment of a team is to make Chunin. I'll look for them tomorrow and hopefully they're still alive so we can advance. Naruto then made a clone of himself. Damn, I usually make about 10 shadow clones with the amount of chakra I just used. I really need to get that damn seal off. Time to see if the fox was right. Hey, go outside and look around before you disperse yourself. Naruto ordered his clone outside and waited 5 minutes before a wave of memories hit him. Naruto's eyes widened. Holy crap. The amount of training I can get done with this is insane. Naruto then used a spare branch to cover himself for the night as an extra precaution against being spotted. Sleep overtook him quickly as he was already drained emotionally and physically from the day's events. Thoughts of all the ways he could use his clones to train filled his mind as he dozed off for the night. Naruto woke up early the next morning. He looked around outside and saw the sun was barely up. He quickly took note that he felt much better than the previous day, but his scar still hurt. Naruto gathered his equipment before heading high up into the trees. Once Naruto made it to a high branch, he made 5 clones and had them spread out as he made his way slowly towards the tower in the middle of the forest where the teams who had both scrolls would be gathering. Naruto traveled for hours before the memories of his clones came back to him. Naruto saw Team 10 going through their morning routine before packing up and following the river. His other clones saw random teams from the Rain Village and Sound Village along with 2 others from the Leaf he didn't recognize. Naruto stopped and started to set up traps around the clearing he was in for both animals and other ninjas. He made 10 clones and had them set a perimeter around him to warn him if anyone came by. Most of the village didn't realize, but Naruto was an expert in stealth. He had been hiding from villagers and later on from other ninjas when he would perform his pranks for years. Hiding his presence had become second nature to him when he was out performing his pranks. I'm already tired and it's only been half a day. Naruto thought to himself. I really need to fix my chakra control, it cost way too much energy making those 10 clones. Naruto then remembered how one of his academy instructors had mentioned one of the basic ways to learn to better chakra control inside his body was to meditate. He figured the seal had messed up his chakra flow by taking away the constant connection it had with the 9 tails, so everything was out of whack. Naruto found a spot hidden away from view between some thick branches and got into position by crossing his legs and having his hands touching in his lap. Soon he lost himself inside his meditation and he could feel his chakra flow around his body. He felt how turbulent it felt around his stomach where he knew his seal and the one Orochimaru placed on him where. The whiskered blonde spent the rest of the day until night fell soothing out his chakra. Naruto only interrupted his meditation twice, once to kill a tiger that had been caught in his trap and to hide when a team of ninja from the Sound Village was spotted by one of his clones. This should be good, I feel a lot better with my chakra flowing more smoothly. I should be good to go find my team tomorrow and make sure they haven't killed themselves out there. Naruto thought sourly to himself. It's almost over. The faster we get this done, the better chance I have of getting promoted. Naruto finished eating his tiger meat and sat up under a tree before sleeping for the rest of the night. Once he woke up, he noticed he felt many times better than he did yesterday morning. Good, I can finally get going. Naruto thought before he made 3 clones to scout ahead as he picked up some spare tiger meat for the road. Naruto spent most of the day looking for his team before one of his clones popped and sent him memories of the Sound team that had attacked Kabuto at the beginning of the first part of the exam, fighting his comrades. They were in the middle of attacking Lee and Sakura. Naruto made his way towards them when he found the route his clone had taken. It had taken him longer than he would have liked as he had to avoid the many dangerous animals that were in his path. God damn it. It's like they deliberately went the most dangerous way possible. Naruto seethed internally before he made it to the area where he knew his team was. Naruto saw Team 10 battling the Sound team, protecting an injured Lee and Sakura. Naruto also saw the rest of Lee's team standing not too far away from the action when he felt a disgusting chakra. It almost felt like it was corrupted, but Naruto couldn't say by what. What power? Naruto heard Sasuke say. His appearance surprised him and all the others as he had a flame-like markings that wrapped halfway around his body. The remaining 2 Sound ninjas took notice of Sasuke coming out from under the tree. Naruto could hear Ino and Sakura say Sasuke's name and Sasuke turned to Sakura. Sakura, were they the ones who did this to you? His tone was cold with an edge to it as Sakura nodded, nearly in tears from seeing him. TCH, you guys are like damn roaches, you just keep popping up everywhere. It doesn't matter though, I'll blow you all away. The Sound ninja with spiky hair screamed before lifting up his hand and shouting. Decapitating airwaves. Naruto watched as Sasuke dodged the blow that tore the tree he was under away and stood behind him. The Sound ninja hadn't realized he missed as he started gloating. Ha, just like I said, another weak roach. The Sound ninja turned around quickly when he heard Sasuke speak. Such a weak attack wouldn't ever do something to a ninja of my level. Sasuke's voice could be heard clearly. The Sound ninja, angered by the display, lifted both his hands. You're dead. Extreme decapitating airwaves. His attack was noticeably bigger, but Naruto saw Sasuke once again dodge and get behind the enemy ninja. This time though he grabbed both his hands and stepped on his back, locking him in place. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He's gotten faster. Naruto thought to himself as he watched the events unfold. You seem pretty proud of these arms. Sasuke said as he gripped his arms tighter. Then with a vicious pull, he broke the Sound ninja's arms. Sakura and Team 10 looked on in shock, not being able to believe how brutal Sasuke was being. Lee's team looked on mostly impassive, though Tenten and Lee had slightly disapproving looks to them. Naruto took this time as everyone was focused on Sasuke to move behind Lee's teammates. Sasuke let the sound ninja drop to the ground before he turned to the last of the sound team who was battle ready. "So you're the final one, huh? Don't worry, I can fix that," Sasuke said as he walked over to him. He took 4 steps before Sakura had hugged him from behind and started whispering in his ear. Naruto could barely hear what she said, so he pumped chakra into his ear to see if he could listen in. "No, Sasuke, this isn't you, please." Sakura begged Sasuke, who Naruto saw slowly started to slump down as the markings slowly receded into the mark on his neck. "Looks like I wasn't the only one the snake bastard left a mark on," Naruto thought to himself as he saw the sound ninja reach into his kunai pouch and took out an earth scroll. "We can't fight any longer, Sasuke Uchiha, you are clearly stronger than us. I'll give you our scroll if you allow my teammates and I to leave." Naruto saw Sasuke nod before the sound ninja threw him the scroll and quickly and quietly picked his teammates up and left. With that, everyone in the clearing let out a sigh of relief as Team 10 went to Sasuke and Sakura to help them with their wounds. By this point, Sasuke had collapsed as the final marking receded into his seal. "Man, that was such a drag." Choji pulled out a bag of chips before responding to Shikamaru. "Yeah, those sound ninjas were tough." Ino meanwhile was busy helping Sakura even out her hair as it had been cut sometime since the last time Naruto saw her. "Come on, Sakura, I'll even this out quick." Sakura looked over at Ino and nodded in gratitude. "Thanks, Ino pig." Ino smirked back before replying. "Don't think just because I'm helping you means I'll let you have Sasuke." Tenten and Neji dropped down and Tenten picked Lee up. Naruto heard Lee talk to his teammates. "Sorry guys, it seems my flames of youth were not enough. I'll make this up by running 30 laps around the village." Tenten looked at Lee with a sweat drop before smacking Lee. "Don't be an idiot, Lee, we still have to pass the exam." Neji, who was standing slightly away from the groups, looked around before he spotted Team 7 sans Naruto. "Give me your scroll, you're down a member and already failed the exam." Team 10 and Sakura tensed. Naruto quietly made a single clone before deciding to make himself known as he jumped down and landed between the combined Team 7 and 10, separating them from Neji. "You're not getting our scroll." Naruto's appearance shocked the group. Team 10 was wondering where Naruto had been and Lee's team was surprised they hadn't sensed him. Neji dropped into his stance until Naruto looked at him and spoke. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Neji glared at the blonde before speaking. "And why wouldn't I want to? Fate has already declared me the winner." Neji smirked before he felt a kunai touch his throat. His smirk fell as he activated his Byakugan and saw a shadow clone behind him. Everyone was still as the two genin glared at each other. The tense silence was broken by Tenten, who spoke to Neji. "Let it go for now, Neji, we don't even need their scrolls." Neji nodded and Naruto dispelled his clone as Neji took off with an apologetic Lee and Tenten, who gave a small and quick wave to them. Naruto then turned around before looking at the stunned Team 10 and he asked them, "What about you guys?" Shikamaru was the first to answer. "Troublesome, no, we're not gonna fight. We just came to help out some fellow Leaf Ninja." Choji just nodded along, agreeing with Shikamaru. "Yeah, we also have an Earth Scroll." Ino snapped out of her stupor and noticed the makeshift bandages. "Didn't you bring any healing supplies, Naruto? That looks like a serious injury." Naruto looked down at his chest where the remnants of his orange jacket lay. "We gave all our healing supplies to Sakura when we entered the forest." Naruto's tone was cold and even, and it freaked Ino out, who had never seen the blonde act so serious. "Well, why didn't you go to her when you got hurt, you dumbass?" Ino's tone was sharp as she tore into Naruto. There was a small pause before Naruto answered. He wanted to scream right back at Ino, but he had dropped his mask. There was no reason to overreact. Naruto finally answered. "We got separated." Sakura flinched at this, her head hanging low in shame. Ino looked over at Sakura and asked her for some bandages when she shook her head saying she used them all on Sasuke's injuries. Ino looked upset before she reached into her pouch and brought out some of her supplies. You're lucky I brought extra supplies, Naruto. Ino's tone was annoyed as she walked over to Naruto. Now sit, I'll bandage you up. The others looked on surprised before Ino turned to them and yelled. Don't just stand there, go set up a camp for the night, you idiots. Choji and Shikamaru grumbled to themselves about bossy blondes before heading off to make a fire. Naruto looked at Ino as she took off the shredded jacket and shirt and saw the scar that ran across his chest. Thank you, Ino. The blonde looked up and blue eyes met. Ino frowned before replying. Don't look too much into it. I'm just helping out a fellow team. Naruto said nothing as Ino finished wrapping his torso up. How did this even happen? Ino's questioned the injured blonde. Naruto frowned and had to hold back the anger he felt towards his team. He replied eventually as she moved away from him. We got ambushed and I was caught off guard by how skilled the enemy was. Ino's frown deepened before she looked him over. You have to be more careful, Naruto. This isn't the academy anymore. Ino's reply sent a wave of anger through his body before he pushed it back down as Ino didn't know what really happened. Yeah, it won't happen again. That I promise. The two blondes made their way over to the rest of the group with Sasuke was put under another tree and Sakura, Choji and Shikamaru were sitting around the newly made fire. Naruto looked at Sakura who looked away from his gaze, he turned to the other two and addressed them. Thank you for helping out my team, guys. Choji nodded. No problem, Naruto, we couldn't just sit there and do nothing while they were being attacked. TCH, yeah, it was troublesome, but if we hadn't helped, Ino would have yelled at us until we were deaf. Shikamaru laid down after he said this. Ino, who was offended, punched him before sitting next to Sakura. Naruto walked over to the fire and sat down as he pulled out the rest of his tiger meat to share with the others. Choji and Shikamaru took the offered meat and Ino and Sakura denied them. It was quiet as the sun set as Naruto used his arm as a pillow and laid down under one of the trees. They had all went to different trees to sleep. Team 10 and Sakura were taking watch tonight. He offered but was shot down, Ino telling him he should rest. Naruto meditated before he let sleep claim him. Only 2 days left, we need to move fast tomorrow. Naruto's thoughts drifted to his team. Just 2 more days and we can get out of this horrible place. Naruto's last thought of the night was of his promise to the Nine Tails and how he promised he would never be weak again. Naruto felt himself wake up and quickly made his way out from under the tree where he was resting. He spotted Ino awake and slowly made his way towards her. He also noticed Sakura waking up from her spot next to Sasuke where she had most likely spent the night watching him when she wasn't on watch. Naruto made a clone to go out and find an animal so they could eat before they left as he started up the fire that they had put out last night as to not attract attention. Hey Naruto, you're up early, are you sure you should be up so early? The sun just came out. Ino's voice snapped Naruto from his thoughts as he turned towards her. I want to get the day started as early as possible. The faster we can get the scrolls we need, the faster we can leave this forest. Ino looked surprised before letting out a small chuckle as she looked at his bandages and noticed they were still in pretty good condition. Yeah, I miss my bed. This place is crazy, even Sasuke was hurt. Naruto frowned at the mention of his teammate. He was once again interrupted from his thoughts when his clone came back with a rabbit. Ino looked at the clone and saw it had brought food and her eyes widened a bit. I didn't know your clones were so useful. They're very useful, but they cost a lot of chakra. Naruto took a moment before setting the rabbit over the fire as his clone had already skinned it. Ino, go wake up Choji and Shikamaru and I'll wake up my team. Naruto had to hold back the venom that wanted to leak into his tone. Ino nodded before walking over to where her teammates were resting. Naruto walked over to Sasuke's tree as he heard Sakura speak to him for the first time since she had abandoned him. She had circles in her eyes from lack of sleep. Naruto, I'm glad you're okay. Her voice was raspy. It was obvious she had not been resting. Stop pretending like you care, Sakura. There's no one here to fool. Sakura looked hurt by his words, but before she could respond, Sasuke groaned and sat up. He looked around groggily and his eyes grew wide when he noticed Naruto. So you managed to survive, huh? Dead last. Sasuke's remark made Naruto's eyes blaze with anger as he slowly calmed himself down. Naruto had to remind himself he still needed them to pass this part of the exam. Naruto glared at them before responding. Get up. Ino is waking up Team 10 and as soon as we eat breakfast we're leaving. Naruto's icy tone took Sasuke by surprise as he responded with an icy tone of his own. And why should I listen to you? Because I'm not a coward who runs away from a fight. Naruto's reply sent Sasuke into a rage as he stood up with his Sharingan active as he glared back at the blonde. Sakura quickly stepped between them as she spoke to both of them. Guys, please. She pleaded to her two male teammates. Let's just be glad we all managed to survive. Sasuke said nothing as he clutched his neck before he huffed and pushed past Sakura and shoulder bumped past Naruto, who glared at him. Sakura turned to Naruto. I'm so sorry I left you, Naruto, but after Sasuke collapsed I. Shut up, Sakura. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't change the fact that you left me for dead out there after I came back and risked my life for you too. Naruto didn't wait for a reply as he left to go to the others. It was an awkward breakfast with all of Team 7 being very quiet. Eventually the teams decided to head towards the tower after deciding to team up. The group had been traveling for a couple of hours in silence before Shikamaru had asked Naruto why he wasn't with the rest of his team when the sound team attacked, along with asking when he had shown up. Sakura looked over to them as she, Ino and Sasuke were leading the group. Before she or Sasuke could talk, Naruto beat them to it. We got separated when an enemy team ambushed us. Sakura looked surprised and Sasuke looked impassive. Ino took notice of Sakura's expression but said nothing. I showed up when Sasuke woke up with those weird markings. I was going to show myself then but decided to see how things played out when Sasuke beat the sound team. Naruto's answer surprised Shikamaru, who nodded with a calculating look. At this point Choji decided to also speak up. You looked real cool against the Hyuga, Naruto. I didn't even see the clone come up behind him. Choji's praise caused Sasuke to look over at Naruto with a hard expression before he turned back around. Yeah, it was pretty cool, but nothing is ever gonna be as cool as Sasuke. Ino's reply was expected, but it still annoyed the blonde to be compared to Sasuke. The two teams made a quick stop to eat lunch before continuing. They had traveled for another 4 hours before they stopped as they heard two people arguing. It was one of the other sand teams. They were all wearing tan shirts and black pants. The two arguing had short brown hair and eyes. Their female teammate had long black hair as she tried to get them to calm down. The group had already made a plan to capture any enemy teams they ran across. Sasuke made himself known to the sand ninja as Shikamaru sneaked behind them and used his shadow possession jutsu to immobilize the enemy. They started screaming curses and threats but stopped when Naruto made two shadow clones and knocked them out. The group tied them up as they searched the sand ninjas and managed to acquire a heaven scroll. They decided that Sasuke, being the best fighter, should keep the scroll. Naruto had to hold a remark as he figured causing an argument would slow them down more than necessary. The two teams set up camp for the night as Choji and Shikamaru decided to go to the nearby river to fill up the canteens and catch some fish. Sakura set up the fire as Sasuke went off to a nearby tree to rest. This left Ino and Naruto alone and she took advantage of the time to replace his bandages. So what actually happened between you and the rest of your team? You guys have been glaring at each other all day. Ino's question caught Naruto off guard. He must have shown it as Ino spoke again. Hey, what's with the face? My clan specializes in information gathering. It was pretty easy for me to see you guys weren't telling the whole truth. Naruto thought pretty hard before answering. I'll tell you after we reach the tower. Naruto didn't want to tell Ino, who would then confront his team, that would cause them to go slower, plus he really needed to talk to the Hokage about Orochimaru and the seal he had put on him and Sasuke. Ino glared at her fellow blonde, clearly not liking the answer as she finished applying new bandages. Fine. I expect you to tell me as soon as we get inside the tower then. Her tone left no room for argument, and Naruto really didn't feel like starting a fight with the platinum blonde, so he nodded. Soon enough everyone minus Sasuke gathered around the fire, and soon the dinner was eaten and everyone drew lots to see who would take watch. Naruto had gotten the second to last watch, with Choji taking the last spot. Shikamaru would start off, with Ino going next, then Sasuke, followed by Sakura. Before they each went their own sleeping areas, Naruto heard a noise as he prepared to jump into action. Kabuto pushed his way past the bushes as he made himself known to the others. This caused everyone to jump up and get into a combat stance until they saw it was another leaf ninja and lowered their weapons slightly. Single quote. Oh, hey Kabuto, what are you doing here? Sakura was the first to break the silence. My team and I decided to split up to cover more ground. I saw you guys were all gathered and I figured I could come help out some fellow leaf ninja. His response put everyone at ease except for the two male members of Team 7, though for completely different reasons. Naruto because his instincts told him not to trust him, and Sasuke because he wanted to fight Kabuto for his scroll. It took Sakura, Choji, Shikamaru, and Kabuto himself to convince Sasuke to let Kabuto join them to hunt down other teams. He had convinced the group that his team already had both scrolls and that they were going to meet up with him at the tower tomorrow. Soon the night passed, and when it was Naruto's turn to keep watch, he went to a well-hidden branch, made 4 clones to patrol for him, and meditated until it was finally Choji's turn. The group woke up just before dawn as they made their way towards the tower when Naruto felt something was off. He noticed his chakra had shifted slightly and quickly cleared the disturbance and saw he was put into a mild genjutsu. Naruto stopped and warned the others. Guys, stop. We were put under a genjutsu. Sasuke was quick to reply. And how would you know, loser? His voice carrying a mocking undertone. Kabuto put his hands together and shouted, "Release," and confirmed that they were in a genjutsu. Sasuke glared at Naruto before releasing the genjutsu himself as the others followed suit. The group was on guard as a voice spoke out and 3 figures rose from the ground. So you noticed the genjutsu, huh? Well, it doesn't matter, we will be taking your scrolls from you now. The middle ninja said. Naruto noticed that all the genins were wearing respirators and were from the Rain Village. They all had on a tan jumpsuit and masks around their eyes, with the one on the left covering one eye and the one on the right covering both eyes. The middle one had 2 eye holes and was glaring at the group. Sasuke stepped up to the Rain Ninjas. HMPH, you weaklings are the ones who are about to lose their scroll. Sasuke then rushed towards them and punched the one in the middle and was shocked to see his fist phase through him before receiving a counter punch from the one-eyed Rain Ninja. Sasuke rolled with the punch and backed up where everyone got into their fighting stances. The Rain Ninjas seemed to multiply as more and more of them rose from the ground around them. Oh man, there's a lot of them. Choji's voice cut through the air as random clones rushed the group, who started to fight back only for their attacks to go through them, just like Sasuke's attack. Random clones would counterattack against the group, making everyone even more confused when their attacks would fail. Naruto suddenly moved his head to the left as he felt the wind from the Rain Ninja's punch. Acting on instinct, he grabbed the outstretched limb, before turning around and tossing him over his shoulder onto the ground before delivering a devastating haymaker to his face, breaking his respirator and knocking the Rain Ninja out. The real ones are hiding with the clones. Naruto warned his companions as he saw Sasuke activate his Sharingan with a look of anger and kick the one who had his eyes covered in the stomach, and as he doubled over, Sasuke took advantage by uppercutting him and knocking him out. The last Rain Ninja tried to run away but was caught by Shikamaru's shadow possession jutsu. The Rain Ninja looked around in panic. Why? He couldn't finish as he was knocked out by Kabuto, who told the others to tie up the rain ninjas as Ino and Sakura searched them. The girls found they had a heaven scroll. Upon seeing this, the group sighed in relief at the sight of it. Ino let out a small cheer with Sakura before Naruto looked at everyone. Let's get to the tower as soon as possible, I want to get out of this forest. Naruto snapped everyone out of their mini celebrations, and soon the group was moving, and after half an hour they came to the tower. Kabuto was called over by the rest of his team as he said a quick bye and good luck. After that, Team 10 also said their goodbyes and left to enter through another door, but not before Ino whispered to the blonde that she still wanted an explanation from him. It was just Team 7 for the first time since the encounter with Orochimaru. Things were tense and Sakura read the message on the door as a way to ease the tensions. For those who have earth, they must seek heaven. For those who have heaven, they must obtain earth. I wonder what that means. Naruto and Sasuke just stayed quiet as they watched Sakura ponder the riddle. Sasuke became impatient as he took out the scrolls and opened them and threw them on the ground when they started to smoke, and soon Naruto heard a very familiar voice and he let out a small smile. You guys just barely met the deadline, but I'm glad you made it. The smoke cleared completely and allowed them to see their scarred academy teacher. Iruka had a big smile on his face before he noticed Naruto's bandaged chest and frowned but said nothing. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, the riddle on the door represents how to become a well-rounded ninja. It means if you lack heaven, which represents intelligence, that you should study to learn all you can. The other is fairly obvious, that those who lack earth, which represents bodily strength, should train to acquire what they lack. Sakura nodded, paying close attention to her old sensei, while Sasuke ignored him completely as Naruto nodded along. The next stage begins in about 2 hours, so take your time to rest before you're summoned. Good luck guys, I'm proud of you. Iruka suddenly went up in smoke and disappeared. Naruto frowned. I couldn't ask him about going to Old Man Hokage. Naruto went through the door and found 3 beds and 2 doors. One of them was opened, leading to a bathroom, and the other was closed. He assumed was the entryway to where they needed to go. Naruto saw Sasuke go into the bathroom and close the door as he and Sakura were left by themselves. Naruto moved to one of the beds and laid down when Sakura interrupted him. Look Naruto, I'm sorry about what happened in the forest. Sakura was still standing in the middle of the room. Naruto took a second to compose himself before he answered. It doesn't matter anymore, Sakura. What's done is done. Sakura let out a small smile. I'm glad you could forgive us. It won. Naruto cut her off. I don't forgive you, Sakura. Not you or Sasuke. Sakura froze before her face grew red with rage. What is your problem? I made a mistake and I've tried to apologize for it, and every time I do you just blow me off. We're supposed to be a team, you idiot. Sakura screamed at the blonde and was walking over to him to hit him when she froze from the killing intent that Naruto was releasing. How dare she? How dare she? Naruto seethed as he continued to glare at the pinkett. He slowly got up from the bed and walked over to her, and Sakura backed up until she fell on one of the beds. My problem is that one of my teammates is a deranged emo who used his already incapacitated teammate for a substitution, and the other one is a useless fangirl that would rather run off with her precious crush than go help her bleeding, badly injured teammate. My problem, Sakura, is that my teammates abandoned me in the middle of a forest filled with dangerous man-eating animals and enemy ninjas. Naruto's voice never rose, but Sakura could feel the pure loathing in them. So no, Sakura, I don't forgive you or Sasuke, because as far as I'm concerned, you, Sasuke, and this team can go to hell. Naruto finished his tirade and noticed Sakura had started crying halfway through. He went back to his bed and laid down, waiting for Sasuke to exit the bathroom. Sasuke exited after another 10 minutes and ignored both his teammates as he laid in his own bed and promptly fell asleep. Sakura had rushed into the bathroom after Sasuke had gone in and slammed the door shut. Great, thought an already annoyed Naruto. She's probably going to be there for the rest of the time we have left. Deciding that going to the bathroom to clean up was not worth the hassle, Naruto began to meditate again to pass the time and soothe his chakra flow. It was another hour before Sakura came out with puffy eyes and simply went to the final bed to rest for the remaining time. Naruto took this chance to go into the bathroom. He noticed there were spare medical supplies and used them to bandage up his torso. He also noticed they had spare shirts and pants. Good, I've gotten tired of running around with my chest always exposed. Naruto threw the remaining pieces of his shirt away and put on a short-sleeved black shirt. The bandages were visibly sticking out, but he didn't care anymore about his appearance. Naruto made it out of the bathroom just as the door opened and an Anbu told them to follow her, telling them the next part of the exam was starting. They made it to a big open room with stairs that lead up to catwalks where he could see all of the Jonin sensei's wear. Naruto took count of all the teams that made it. All of our classmates made it. So did Lee's and Kabuto's team, along with the Sand team with the crazy redhead and the Sound team. Naruto stopped his observation when the Anbu told all the genin to line up so the Hokage could address them. Naruto saw Kakashi grab Sasuke and whisper into his ear. Whatever was said the younger man didn't like as he grabbed his neck and glared at Kakashi. The blonde turned his attention from them to the Hokage, who was standing in front of a statue of arms doing a hand seal. Naruto noticed the proctors from the first two parts of the exams as well as a Jonin who was dressed in the standard Leaf Village Chunin uniform. He had brown bangs that stuck out of his bandana which had the Leaf Village symbol. The man kept coughing every couple of minutes and Naruto wondered if he was going to be okay. He saw the Hokage step up before announcing the true purpose of these exams, which was to simulate war between the villages. He explained how they helped build relationships along with showing potential clients with up-and-coming talent. Unfortunately, the third began to say, "It seems too many of you have passed. We will need to conduct a preliminary round to reduce your numbers before the finals." This had an instant effect and had the genin yelling in protest. "Enough. People all over the world will be coming and there are simply far too many of you." At this point, the sickly man who was coughing interrupted the Hokage. "Please allow me to explain from this point on, Lord Hokage." The third simply nodded as he allowed the man to step forward. "My name is Gecko Hayate and I will be the proctor for this part of the exam. From this point on we shall have a series of random one-on-one fights to cut you in half." The proctor stopped midway through the speech to cough. "Over to my right there is a screen and your names will appear randomly on the screen. Those chosen will then fight. Before we begin, would anyone like to back out? This is your last chance to do so." Team 10 looked unsure as they had just gotten here and Ino sent a worried glance towards Team 7. The only person to back out was Kabuto, who said he was out of chakra after spending 5 days fighting in the forest. "Sorry, I just can't keep going." The proctor just nodded and an Anbu lead Kabuto out of the room. "Does anyone else wish to leave?" The proctor waited before he continued. "Very well. All of you go upstairs to your Jonin senseis and come back down when your name appears on the screen." Team 7 ended up standing in between teams 8 and 9. "Ha! Can you believe all us rookies made it this far?" Kiba's boisterous gloat was largely ignored as the first two names appeared on the screen. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato. Sasuke went down the steps and smirked at his opponent who was standing across from him. Naruto heard Sasuke mock his opponent, a man with a face mask and bandana. He was wearing a blue and white shirt, blue pants, and his eyes were covered by dark glasses. "This will be over fast." Sasuke's opponent doesn't respond and he simply drops to his fighting stance. "Do you think Sasuke is healed enough to fight him?" Naruto turns to Ino. His response of, "I don't really care," never came out as he looked back to the ninja down below. "I'm sure he'll be fine." Naruto's response caught Kakashi's attention as he was expecting a more Naruto-like response. Ino just nodded as everyone turned to the proctor, who started speaking. "If both parties are ready." The proctor paused to make sure both genins were prepared. "Begin." Sasuke dashed towards his enemy as soon as the proctor said to begin. He tried to hit him several times with punches and kicks, but Yoroi, who was Kabuto's teammate, dodged them before grabbing one of Sasuke's kicks and threw him across the room. Sasuke flipped in the air before landing on his feet, an angry scowl marring his face. So this is all the mighty Uchiha clan has to offer, huh? This is disappointing. Don't worry, I won't make this last too long. I'll finish this with my next attack. Naruto could see that the remarks angered Sasuke even more. The Uchiha started going through some hand seals but stopped halfway as he clutched his neck. It looks like that mark is still hurting him. Ino's concerned voice was heard over the gasps Sakura was releasing. Naruto didn't say anything as he stared down at the fight going on below. Sasuke once again ran through hand seals as Yoroi rushed him. Sasuke took a deep breath before shouting, "Fire style! Fireball jutsu!" Yoroi dodged to the left. He didn't dodge fast enough to completely avoid it. A part of his shirt was singed by the fire. Sasuke, with unexpected speed, ran at him and elbowed the older genin in the face. Yoroi was pushed back by the blow and Sasuke tried to follow up with a kick, but Yoroi grabbed Sasuke's leg mid-swing and threw him on the ground. Sasuke tried to get up but was quickly straddled by the older genin. "It's over," Yoroi exclaimed as grabbed Sasuke by the face, his hand glowing because of his jutsu. Sasuke struggled under the bigger man but managed to uppercut him. Using the opening, he headbutted the older genin and freed himself from his grasp. Naruto noticed that his teammate looked a lot more worn out than he should have. Kabuto's teammate looked slightly rejuvenated. Sasuke glared at the man and the masked genin simply chuckled. "I see you noticed. My jutsu allows me to drain the chakra of my enemies and add it to my own." Naruto heard several gasps from the other rookies around him and saw that Sasuke glared at the man before grabbing his neck in pain. He looked over at Kakashi and saw he was watching the match intently. Naruto saw Sasuke activate his Sharingan before he moved so quickly that Naruto almost didn't notice him. "So you copied Lee's technique." This time Naruto heard Lee and his sensei Guy gasp in shock as they looked on. Sasuke had gotten below Yoroi before kicking him up in the air. As Yoroi was hanging in the air, Sasuke blurred behind him. Sasuke grimaced in pain as his mark flared before receding back to the seal. He kicked Yoroi's side to maneuver himself above him. Sasuke launched punch to his opponent's face before spinning and hitting him with an elbow that made the older ninja hit the ground just as Sasuke landed an axe kick to his stomach that cracked the floor under them. He heard his teammate shout out the name of his new move. Lion's Barrage. Sasuke stood up and stepped away as the proctor walked over and checked on the downed ninja. Yoroi Akado is unable to continue. The winner is Sasuke Uchiha. The other rookies, mostly Sakura and Ino, let out cheers. Naruto just let a small frown come to face. Kakashi made his way over to Sasuke before he took him away. Ino noticed that Naruto was frowning and called him out on it. "Hey, aren't you happy your teammate won?" Her question brought the attention of Shino and Hinata. "To be honest, I really didn't care who won the match." His answer made Hinata give him a concerned look as Shino looked undisturbed. Ino, who traveled with Team 7 for days, knew how high the tension was there. Sakura, who was standing nearby, just had an angry face on. The conversation was cut short as the proctor called the next two participants. "Would Shino Aburame and Zaku Abumi please come down?" The two genins made their way down. Zaku had his arms in a sling thanks to the injuries from Sasuke. The two stared each other down before the proctor spoke up again. "If both fighters are ready, begin." The proctor jumped back to give the genin more space. "You should give up. You have no chance of winning." "Why?" "Because you are already injured and I am not." Shino's calm and collected tone seemed to tick off the sound ninja. "That's the difference between us. I'm a lot stronger than any of you weak leaf ninja." Zaku raised his left arm and started firing a burst of wind at Shino, who simply dodged and let his insects swarm around him. "You've made a foolish mistake." Shino started sending wave after wave of his bugs at Zaku, who tried to fend them off with his one good arm. But no matter how much he struggled, he couldn't get rid of all of them. You should forfeit. Why? Because you are outmatched. Zaku grit his teeth as he brought out his other arm from its sling. I always have a trump card. Zaku screamed at Shino as he raised both his arms and pointed them at him. Extreme decapitating airwaves. There was a moment of silence before Zaku's arms exploded at the elbows as he screamed in pain and fell to the ground. There were insects in his arm tubes that had plugged up the escape. All around there was a stunned silence. Naruto looked around and saw that Ino looked pale and that every one of the rookies sans himself and Shikamaru looked a little green. I always thought he was creepy in the academy, but that was a whole new level of disturbing. Ino let out a small shudder and Sakura nodded along. Hey, Shino is always quiet, but he's dangerous. He's probably the opponent I would like to fight least out of all us rookies. Kiba's comment was met with silence and a quiet, troublesome, from Shikamaru. That's a scary kid you got there, Kurenai. Asuma said to the only female sensei of the rookies who looked at her fellow Jonin. He has the best chance out of everyone here to make Chunin. Before any of the senseis could refute her comment, the proctor had called the match. Zaku Abumi is no longer able to battle. The winner is Shino Aburame. Shino made his way upstairs as his teammates congratulated him, Kiba with a pat on the back and Hinata with a small smile. Kakashi walked back up the stairs and Sakura asks him if Sasuke was okay. He'll be fine, Sakura, there's nothing to worry about. Sakura looks relieved as she watched her sensei take his spot with the other Jonin. The attention of everyone was once again brought to the screen as it cycled through names as it landed on Kankuro and Masumi Tsurugi, who was Kabuto's third teammate. He, like his other teammate, wore a bandana and cloth that covered his mouth, but unlike his teammate, he wore glasses that weren't blacked out. Would both contestants please make their way down? The two Genins made their way without saying a word and were soon squared up facing each other. If you're both ready, begin. Masumi rushed Kankuro, who did nothing but stand there, and soon Masumi wrapped around Kankuro's body with his limbs bending at unnatural angles. Fool, you should have never allowed me to get so close. My jutsu allows me to dislocate my joints and move my arms and legs so I can perfectly trap my foes. Give up or I'll snap your neck. His tone was sharp and confident. I refuse. Kankuro was calm even when in such a position. Naruto narrowed his eyes and noticed that his chest wasn't moving at all. He's not breathing. Naruto paid extra attention to the fight. Then Masumi followed through with his threat as he twisted Kankuro's neck. You should have listened. He dropped Kankuro's dead body on the ground and addressed the proctor as gasps could be heard from those around the room. Call the match. He shouted in surprise when he was suddenly wrapped up by Kankuro's body just like he had held him mere moments ago. He turned to look at him to see his face peeling away to show a wooden puppet underneath. What? How? From the beginning, you never stood a chance. Kankuro's voice came from the bundled wrap on the ground that his puppet was carrying. Masumi looked stunned before looking to the proctor. IGIV. Before he could finish, Naruto saw Kankuro clench his hands, and soon the sound of bones breaking filled the room as his opponent dropped to the ground unable to support himself. Hey, now it's over. The proctor quickly called the match for Kankuro as medics came in and took Masumi away. Naruto looked and saw that Ino had a sickly face. I can't believe he would do that. He was in the middle of giving up. Anything is legal as long as there is no outside help. The only rule is you fight until your opponent gives up, is unconscious or dead. Naruto's hard tone took many of those around him by surprise, especially his team sensei, who looked at Naruto with his one uncovered eye. The screen soon ran through more names until it stopped on two very familiar names. Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. The proctor called both of them down. Good luck, Ino. Naruto's remark caused everyone to look at him in shock, as it wasn't a secret that the blonde had a huge crush on the pinkett. Sakura had a look of betrayal but was soon covered by anger as she made her way down. Thanks, Naruto, but I don't need luck against forehead. Ino's voice was full of confidence. Naruto simply shrugged and nodded as Ino was making her way down. Kakashi spoke to his most boisterous student. That wasn't very nice, Naruto. Just because you have a new girlfriend doesn't mean you should cheer against your teammate. Kakashi had purposely phrased his comment as to get a reaction out of his student. He was expecting him to splutter and blush as he denied his claims. What he got threw him for a loop and had him wondering what was wrong with his student. It also got the attention of Ino's team along with Hinata and her sensei. Ino's not my girlfriend, Kakashi. I was just being civil with her for helping me in the forest. Naruto's calm response made everyone question if it was actually him and not someone else, as Kakashi noticed the lack of sensei to his name. Before he could question it further, the proctor asked if both fighters were ready. Begin. The proctor jumped back from the two girls who simply stared at each other. Before removing their forehead protectors from their individual places on their body and tied them around their foreheads. The two glared at each other before running at each other, meeting in the middle of the room, engaging in a taijutsu match. The two began to exchange punches and kicks, but neither was landing a blow on the other. Sakura jumped back and created two clones and rushed Ino, who merely scuffed and threw 3 kunai, one to each. Sakura and saw the middle one dodged and the other two simply disappeared when the kunai went through them. You're gonna have to try harder than that, forehead. Ino mocked her rival. Sakura said nothing and began an exchange again until Ino overextended a punch and Sakura was able to land a right-handed punch to her face. The two separated after Sakura landed her punch and Ino smirked. I'm glad you're taking this seriously. Sakura frowns and tries a new tactic, seeing as this was getting nowhere. I always take things seriously, unlike you who spends too much time caring about how she looks. Naruto, who was listening to them, let out a small huff. Hello Kettle, have you met Pot? Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by Ino cutting pieces of her hair and throwing it at Sakura. Fine then, let me show you how serious I can get. Ino's voice was full of anger as she brought her hands up into her clan's special jutsu. Ninja arts. Mind-body switch jutsu. Sakura, who knew what the jutsu did, jumped out of the way as Ino's body slumped to the ground. Ha! I win, Ino pig. Sakura's celebration was cut short as she felt her get restrained and she looked down to see Ino's hair bind her. What is this? It's my chakra hair trap jutsu. I knew you would dodge my first jutsu, so I faked it. Now you can't dodge. Ninja arts. Mind-body switch jutsu. Ino fired her technique and once again fell limp as Sakura stood up with Ino's hair falling to the ground. Sakura slowly raised her hand and spoke to the proctor. I give you. Before she could finish speaking, she bit her lip hard enough to draw blood. Ino jumped up from unconsciousness as she looked around confused. Both kunoichi looked to be breathing heavily. I don't know how you managed to escape, but it doesn't matter, you're going down. Ino's declaration would have been more believable if she didn't look like a gust of wind would knock her down. Bring it, Ino. Sakura and Ino then rushed at each other before simultaneously landing punches on each other as they knocked themselves out. Naruto turned when he heard Ten laugh and spotted Kurenai giving both Asuma and Kakashi disapproving looks. The proctor proclaims the match a draw and soon Ino and Sakura were brought up when the medical team woke them up. Both Ino and Sakura looked happy and determined even though they lost and neither would advance. You got lucky that you faced each other. Ino and Sakura looked at Naruto with curious expressions. What's that supposed to mean? Ino's tone was hard. It means if you had faced any of the Sound Ninja or the red-headed Sand Ninja, you would have died. Naruto's statement sent chills through their spines as they looked at the redhead who was releasing copious amounts of killing intent. Go Ten, show them your flames of youth. Naruto's attention was brought to Lee and looked towards the screen to see Temari vs Ten. Both kunoichis were already down the steps. The proctor started the match and jumped away. I'm glad I get to go after the disappointment that was the last match. I can show everyone not all kunoichi are useless fangirls. Ten's statement was met with shouts of anger from Ino and Sakura, who were ignored. HMPH, well, see about that. Temari's statement caused Tenten to grow angry as she started pulling out scrolls from her ninja pouch, unsealing a ridiculous amount of weapons that flew at the Sand Kunoichi. Temari grabbed the fan of her back and opened it slightly to show a single crescent moon and swung her fan, making a gust of wind that completely stopped the barrage of weapons. If this is all, I'm going to be very disappointed. Tenten, with a look of determination, unsealed a bow staff and ran at the blonde, only to be blasted back when she was hit with another blast of wind. Come on Tenten, you can do it. Lee's encouragement was heard by everyone. She got a bad matchup. If she has nothing else, she won't be able to win, thought Naruto. Tenten pulled out 2 scrolls from her kunai holsters on her leg and jumping into the air as she rained down even more weapons. Temari smirked before unleashing a tornado of wind that picked Tenten up and slammed her onto her folded fan she was holding out. There was a moment as Tenten lay there when the proctor called the match. Lee quickly went to go pick up his teammate, who was then taken away by the medics. That was most unkind. Lee's voice was hard as he spoke to the Sand Kunoichi. Whatever, kid, she's lucky I went easy on her. Lee glared at the Sand team as he made his way up. Poor Tenten, she had a horrible matchup, said Guy. She wasn't fated to win today. Guy gave Neji a disappointed look before going to check on his student. Woohoo! We won the lottery, Akamaru. Naruto looked towards the screen to see his name had finally come up along with that of Kiba's. Would Naruto Uzumaki and Kiba Inuzuka please come down? Kiba jumped down and yelled up at Naruto. Hurry up, dead last, and don't worry, I'll make this quick. This is it, this is where I start. No more holding back. Naruto made his way down, but not before he got a good look from both Ino and surprisingly Hinata. Naruto stood across from Kiba when he heard Kurenai speak to Kakashi. Sorry Kakashi, but Naruto doesn't stand a chance. I wouldn't say that. Naruto may surprise you. His attention was brought back to the proctor when he announced if both fighters are ready. Kiba nodded with a smirk and Naruto just gave a single nod. Begin. The proctor jumped back to give the combatants more room. Hey, stay back buddy, I won't need you for this. Get ready Naruto, cause I'll end this in one hit. Kiba ran at Naruto with surprising speed and tried to elbow him in the gut. Naruto, seeing this, allowed his instincts to guide him as he spun out of the way and decided to elbow him in the back of the head. Kiba crashed into the ground and those who knew Naruto were shocked into silence at this display. Wow, when did Naruto get so good? Said Ino. Troublesome blondes. Shikamaru was instantly rewarded with a slap to the back of the head. As Sakura looked on with slight concern, Naruto jumped back to avoid a sweeping leg kick from Kiba as he stood back up and wiped the blood from his nose. You got lucky Naruto. Naruto stared down Kiba as he shouted at him. Kiba decided to throw some kunai at Naruto, and as he dodged he ran up to him and tried to punch him. Naruto grabbed his punch and threw him away from himself. Fine, I'll stop messing around. Let's go Akamaru. Kiba reached into his pouch and threw several pellets at Naruto and soon he was surrounded by the smoke. Naruto closed his eyes and focused on his senses and jumped backward as he felt a small object bite onto his shirt and tore it away. Great! I just got that shirt. Naruto quickly refocused as he felt 2 presences coming at him from either side. He reached out and grabbed Akamaru from the air as he tried to bite his arm and quickly kicked Kiba out of the smoke. Kiba slid to a stop and saw 2 Narutos, one holding Akamaru and the other standing off to its left. Give up Kiba. Naruto's tone was cold and Kiba felt himself shiver involuntarily from the slight killing intent he was giving off. There's no way I'm giving up. Akamaru catch. Kiba threw a pill at Akamaru that he had gotten out when he had seen Akamaru get taken. Naruto grabbed the pill from midair and crushed the pill in his hands. If you want to continue, fine, but it's going to be just you and me. Naruto signaled to his clone, who quickly jumped up to the statue and held Akamaru there. You asked for it Naruto. Ninja arts. Beast mimicry, all fours jutsu. Kiba shot off towards Naruto faster than ever before and Naruto rolled to the left and as he was getting up he heard Kiba shouting. Ninja art. Fang over Fang. Naruto jumped straight up to dodge Kiba who was spinning so fast he had become a tornado. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough and his bandages got torn off allowing everyone to stare at his barely healed scar that ran across his chest. At the sight of it, several people reacted. Hinata and Sakura who had never seen the scar started tearing up. The third and Kakashi narrowed their eyes while everyone else wondered how he was able to move so well with such a wound. Naruto once he landed had to quickly dodge again as he just escaped another hit from Kiba. Damn it, I need more speed, thought Naruto who started channeling chakra all over his body to give himself a boost. He made 2 clones to give himself a better chance to counterattack. This had caused his seal to become visible and many people took notice, specifically the Sand team, Neji, and the third. The third saw that Naruto had a 5-element seal placed over his normal 8 trigrams seal and was instantly amazed Naruto was even fighting at all as the seal messed with not only his chakra control but it was also meant to cut the flow of chakra. As Kiba came out of his spin he was instantly put on the defensive as 2 Naruto started to attack him. Kiba was able to pop 1 clone but the other had managed to send him flying with a kick, but before he was able to regain his balance the real Naruto appeared beside him and delivered a devastating punch to his face. Kiba bounced off the floor twice as the tile under him cracked on impact. The only sound that could be heard was Akamaru whimpering and the proctor called the match. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto looked up at the catwalk where the rest of the rookies were staring at him shocked. The third made a quick signal to the Anbu informing them he would be leaving for a short while, then signaled the medics to take Naruto to a private room. Soon the medics took both Kiba and Naruto away as people assumed it was to deal with the giant scar on his chest. As he left he could hear the others talking about him. Wow, I didn't know Naruto had gotten so strong. Ino's voice held amazement as all the other rookies nodded along in mute silence. But did you see that seal he had on his stomach? Her question made the Jonin senseis look at each other. Do you know what it does, Sakura? Sakura looked puzzled. No, but when we were attacked by Oro, Sakura was stopped by Kakashi who had nudged her side, who nodded slightly. This act didn't go unnoticed by Shikamaru, Neji, Shino, and Ino. By the enemy sound team, one of them did hit him in the stomach with a weird jutsu before making him pass out. The others didn't say anything as the next contestants were soon called out. Would Shikamaru, Nara and Kintsuchi please make their way down? Naruto could no longer hear what was said as he was taken into a private room and soon the third came through the door. Hello, Naruto. How are you? The third's voice was calm and gentle like always. Naruto let out a small smile, one that the third had not seen since the blonde had been a small child. Hey old man, honestly, I could be better. Naruto took a second before looking the old Hokage in the eyes and the third was reminded of another blonde man for just a second. I'm assuming you already know that Orochimaru attacked Team 7. Yes, we got the information. We also know he placed a cursed seal on young Sasuke. The third paused for a moment before continuing. I was not aware he had placed a seal on you as well. The third let out a frown at this. Why didn't you inform Iruka or Kakashi about it? Iruka-sensei left too quickly for me to tell him and I didn't see Kakashi until we were all in the big room. Naruto's words caused the aged Hokage to frown before nodding. Well, there's nothing that we can do about that now, but I can remove the seal from you right now. It was originally I who taught this jutsu to my students. I'm amazed you made it this far with the seal on. Soon the third's left hand was lit with blue fire as he touched Naruto's stomach. 5 elemental seal release. Naruto felt the effects instantly. Thanks, old man. No problem, Naruto. There are spare shirts over in the corner. The third pointed to the corner in the room where spare supplies were stacked. He then walked out of the room. You can go back and rejoin the others when you're ready. With that, the third left the room. Deep within Naruto's seal, The Nine Tails lifted its massive head as he noticed the infernal seal being gone. Good. Do not disappoint me, Naruto, the great fox thought to itself before going back to sleep. Naruto walked out to the main area after getting a new black shirt, and he noticed that Hinata and Neji were on the arena floor, and that Hinata was crying. This isn't good, Naruto thought to himself as he made his way upstairs. Naruto made his way upstairs as he kept his eyes trained on the fight below. Something felt off, the tension in the room was suffocating. Give up, Hinata. No matter what you do, no matter how much you try. You can't defy fate. My eyes see everything and you are simply too weak to fight me. Hinata just stood there as more tears slid down her face. She was about to raise her hand when a voice she knew all too well sounded through the room in the form of a loud scoff. Neji turned to look at the blonde with a glare. Do you wish to say something? Our fates are in our own hands, Neji, and Hinata has more strength than you could ever imagine. Naruto spoke in an even tone. He had not intended to speak up, but Neji's talk of fate had really rubbed him the wrong way. Whenever he looked at Hinata, he saw past the shy exterior and saw the same look that Haku had. A look saying they would sacrifice everything for their loved ones, a look he saw in himself. Our fates were decided from the moment we were born. Neji had a very cold look on his face as he was angered by the blonde's words. If you truly believe that, then you're an idiot. Naruto let some of his own anger slip into his tone as the rest of the contestants looked at the exchange with intrigue. Neji sneered at the blonde and turned to Hinata to continue his tirade of insults when he saw the look of determination she now held. A few words from a fool won't change anything, give up. Hinata took a breath as she activated her Byakugan, got into her stance. I won't give up without at least trying. Neji looked furious as he ran at Hinata, and the two started a fight that was more akin to a dance than anything else. Wow, look at how they move, it's incredible, said Ino. Yes, that is the Hyuga style taijutsu, it's one of the most dangerous taijutsu styles in the world. They can injure you with a single touch of a finger. The style relies on shutting down the chakra system in the body by closing tenketsu points one can only see with their bloodline. Guy told all the genin nearby when he heard Ino's remark. They're evenly matched, Sakura said as she looked at the two combatants as they stood still and traded palm strikes and finger jabs. Each blow was being slapped away and countered with a strike from the other. Naruto let out a small frown. No. Sakura and Ino turned their heads to him. Neji has the upper hand, he's managed to land several blows to her arm. Everyone turned back to the fight in time to see Hinata land a blow Neji's shoulder only to make a horrified face. I see you finally noticed. Neji grabbed Hinata's arm and rolled up her beige jacket to show her arm littered with red dots where he had struck her. As I told you, it was your fate to lose. Neji used her distraction and hit her several times all over her body before landing a blow to her chest that launched her across the room. Hinata stood back up on shaky legs, and the proctor, seeing the fight was over, called the match. Why did you stand back up? Neji questioned the beaten Kunoichi. Hinata coughed up blood before continuing. I can't just give up. I know how much you hurt because of the clan elders, just like I do. Neji looked absolutely livid and rushed Hinata. Everyone looked on with widened eyes. Before anyone could react, Naruto channeled chakra all over his body and moved at an incredible speed. He kicked Neji away from Hinata and stood in front of her. Neji slammed his hand on the ground, flipped midair and landed on his feet. The two genins dashed at each other, but they were restrained by both their respective Jonin senseis along with the proctor and the senseis of Team 8 and 10. The other rookies looked stunned at the speed Naruto had moved, faster than any of them could see. When did Naruto get so fast? What's your sensei teaching your team? Ino looked over at Sakura and she looked just as stunned as everyone. Any further thoughts were cut short. Enough. The third's voice boomed across the hall as he unleashed a massive amount of killing intent that brought most of the genin to their knees. As this was happening, the medical team had taken Hinata away. This is your first and only warning. Do not fight in here unsupervised or you'll both be disqualified. That goes for everyone else too. Both Naruto and Neji nodded, but the blonde had not stopped glaring at the older Hyuga. Soon the two were brought back upstairs but kept separated with teams 8 and 10 between them. The proctor waited for everyone to calm down and called the next match. Would Gaara and Rock Lee please come down? Lee looked, who had been quiet since his teammate had been called, exploded in a loud cheer. Yes. I'll finally show everyone my flames of youth. Lee somersaulted over the rail as Gaara appeared in a body flicker of sand. Go Lee. Show everyone the fruits of your hard work. Guy's voice was even louder than Lee's. Gaara looked on emotionlessly as his opponent stood at the ready with pure determination shining in his eyes. If both fighters are ready, begin. Gaara looked on with his face as calm as ever as his opponent sprinted at him and tried to punch him, only for the lid on the gourd on Gaara's back to shoot off as sand came out and blocked the green-clad genin. Lee quickly backed up, circled around him before trying again as he jumped in the air and did a spin kick. Leaf Hurricane. The kick was blocked once again as the sand jumped up by itself to protect Gaara and Lee was forced back. Lee continued to try different angles but nothing was working, his every attempt being stopped by the sand. Gaara looked up for the first time in the match and the sand shot up and slammed into Lee. The green-clad ninja crossed his arms as the sand pushed him away from Gaara and towards the wall. Lee quickly regained his footing as he rushed Gaara again and tried a variety of different combination moves, but it was all futile. Why doesn't Lee try some ninjutsu or genjutsu? Sakura's inquiry was answered by Guy. That's because he can't. Lee can only use taijutsu. Sakura looked perplexed. You see, Lee was born with chakra coils too small to properly channel chakra for anything other than taijutsu. Lee is not talented at all, but it was through his pure work ethic that he has reached this level. Lee's dream is to become a great ninja despite his inability to use gen or ninjutsu. Sakura was about to question Guy once more but was stopped by the man's shout. Take them off, Lee. You have my permission. Guy posed with teeth sparkling as he gave Lee a thumbs up. Lee, who was dodging sand, let loose a million-watt smile as he jumped from the floor to the top of the statue. Are you sure, Guy-sensei? Yes. Go. It's time to show your blazing flames of youth. Of course, Guy-sensei. Lee pulled up his leg warmers to show ankle weights. Lee unstrapped the weights and held them at his sides. Please, as if some measly weights will do anything against Gaara. Naruto heard the sand kunoichi speak to her makeup-wearing teammate, who nodded along. His attention was brought back to his own team sensei. A bit antiquated, don't you think, Guy? Kakashi questioned Guy, who said nothing, his sole focus on his student down below. Lee let go of the weights and as they hit the ground they made huge impact craters. All around yells of disbelief rang out. Naruto's own eyes widened with awe and respect as he watched Lee blur away. He's so fast. I can barely see him moving down there, thought Naruto. Lee appeared beside Gaara and aimed a punch his face. The sand reacted just in time, but Gaara himself didn't seem to notice Lee at all. Lee then circled around and delivered a kick to Gaara's midsection, and once again the sand just barely made it. Lee stepped back and jumped before delivering a double axe kick. The first was met with Gaara's sand, but the second one broke through and Gaara's head snapped down from the force of the kick. Lee, not wasting the opportunity, landed on his feet before launching a punch to Gaara's face that sent him flying. Naruto heard the blonde from the sand team yell in shock. He hit Gaara. He also noticed that her teammate also looked just as shocked. Go Lee. Guy's cheering was easily the loudest anyone had cheered during the preliminaries. Gaara stood back up, his face had cracks running all over where Lee had hit. Pieces of his face fell to the ground and it was shown that he was wearing sand armor. Gaara's face contorted into an absolutely bloodthirsty grin as his killing intent skyrocketed. Yes. You are worthy. By killing you I shall prove my existence. Gaara raised his hands and the sand followed his movement. The sand started moving faster than any previous time it had moved before. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Lee jumped back to avoid the sand. What a troublesome opponent. Lee continued dodging before blurring forward and once again punching his way through Gaara's automatic defense. Lee then dropped low and kicked Gaara up with all his might and Gaara flew up. Lee followed Gaara and delivered more and more kicks pushing him higher and higher. Naruto saw Lee wince and as he closed his eyes he noticed Gaara had taken the opening to substitute himself with a sand clone. That's not good. Naruto thought grimly. As Lee reached his apex he wrapped his bandages around the clone and started spinning them as they started falling head first. Primary Lotus. Lee jumped away just before they hit the ground and the sand clone cratered the ground. Yes. He got him. Sakura cheered and most of the genin and Guy celebrated. No, he didn't. Sakura looked at Naruto in disbelief as Guy took a closer look to the combatants as his face fell. Yes he did, screamed Sakura. Naruto's right Sakura. Gaara substituted himself when Lee closed his eyes because of the pain. I'm surprised you caught that Naruto. Naruto ignored Kakashi's backhanded compliment as he never looked away from the fight below. Lee looked worn out and he had a face of grim realization as he saw his Gaara break apart into sand. He was suddenly being thrown around by Gaara's sand. He was barely able to block and he withstood the punishment as best as possible. It was 5 minutes of torture as Lee took hit after hit before Lee started dodging again. Naruto heard Kakashi speak to Guy in a worried tone. Guy, you didn't. He turned to look at the Jonin and saw Guy had a face of determination. I did. How many gates can he open, Guy? Questioned Kakashi. Lee can open 5 gates. Kakashi's eye widened. Guy, how could you teach that technique to a genin? Naruto was very annoyed at Kakashi. He understood perfectly why Guy taught Lee. It was to help him achieve his dream. Naruto himself never received any acknowledgement or support for his dream. The only 2 people who had never made fun of him were Iruka-sensei and Old Man Hokage himself. He wanted to prove them right. It was completely irresponsible of you to. Naruto had finally had enough. Shut your mouth, Kakashi. Jonin and genin alike looked at the blonde in shock. Who the hell do you think you are blaming Guy for helping his student try and reach his dream? That's what a good sensei is supposed to do. Naruto was glaring at his team sensei. Kakashi looked flabbergasted at his blonde student's sudden outburst and before he could respond everyone's attention was brought back to the fight. Gate of Life. Open. Lee's body exploded in chakra as his skin turned a pinkish hue and his hair started to raise. Gate of Pain. Open. Lee moved faster than Naruto could follow and Gaara was sent flying up onto the air, his sand unable to keep up as Lee kept batting Gaara around the room. This is crazy. I can't even see them move. Ino's shout was met with dumbfounded stares of her fellow rookies who couldn't follow the action. Lee kicked Gaara high into the air and wrapped his bandages around his waist. As he hits him down, Lee screams again. Gate of Limit. Open. Lee jerked his hand up and Gaara was pulled up to Lee, who had his hand cocked back. This is it. Hidden Lotus. Lee hit Gaara so hard it caused a giant shockwave and Gaara's body slammed so hard into the ground it left a giant crater and a dust cloud formed on the floor below. Guy let out a yell as he watched his student hit the ground, his body looking normal after the attack. The smoke around Gaara dissipated and a very injured Gaara lifted his hand as the sand followed his movement. No way. How is he still up after that? Sakura was not the only one to yell in shock. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh at the sight of Gaara as Kakashi spoke up. Gaara shifted the gourd on his back into sand before he hit the ground. No one said anything after that. I barely saw it when it happened. Gaara's monstrously strong, thought Naruto. Gaara watched his opponent stand on shaky legs as his sand wrapped around his right arm and leg. Mother wants your blood. Gaara clenched his fist and crunching could be heard as Lee's appendages exploded in a shower of blood. He fell to the ground unconscious. The proctor was about to declare Gaara the winner when he sent another wave of sand at Lee. Naruto was about to jump down himself only for it to be batted away by Guy. Hayate, seeing the interference by a Jonin, quickly called the match for Gaara. Why did you save him? He lost. He no longer has any worth. Guy looked at the deranged-looking sand ninja. I saved him because he's my precious student. Guy turned to take Lee to the infirmary only to see him already standing up. Lee, it's okay. Guy started crying when he noticed Lee was unconscious. He quickly got him to lay down as the medics took him and Gaara away to treat their wounds. Would Choji Akamichi and Dosu Kinuta please make their way down? The proctor announces. Go Choji, if you win we'll have 2 members of Team 10 in the finals. Ino's remark brought the attention of Naruto. I guess Shikamaru fought while I was talking to the old man. Naruto's musing was cut short by the sound of the proctor starting the match. You can't win, just give up. The one-eyed sound ninja made no move to attack Choji, who just glared back. I have to win. Sensei will take us to an all-you-can-eat buffet if I do. Choji had fire in his eyes as he spoke. No matter then. Dosu charged Choji and hit him with his gauntlet. Choji, who had dodged the punch, fell over and vomited. What? I dodged that attack. Choji's voice was full of confusion. My gauntlet emits a silent sound wave that attacks the human ear. Choji grinned. Then let's see you hit me now. Expansion Jutsu. Choji's stomach inflated and he hid his arms, legs, and head in his torso. Choji stated to spin in place as he shot off towards Dosu. The sound ninja dodged easily to the right as Choji slammed into the wall. Dosu rushed him and slammed his fist into him, letting his melody arm do its work. Seconds later Choji was back to normal and the proctor called the match. Gaara had made his way back and was covered in bandages. Would each match winner please make their way down? The genins made their way and lined up in front of the proctor. Hayate stepped back as the third moved to speak to the genin. Congratulations for making it to the finals. As you know, there are 3 parts to the Chunin exams and the finals will be a series of one-on-one fights tournament style. This caused Tamari to speak up. Are you saying only one person gets to be promoted? The third inhaled a deep breath from his pipe. No, you could win every fight and not be promoted at the same time. You could lose in the first match and be promoted. There will be a panel of judges that will be evaluating you during the matches. The farther you make it, the better chance you have of impressing the judges and getting promoted. The third took a pause before continuing. You will now draw lots to determine who fights who. The third motioned to a box and one by one they pulled lots until everyone had one. Please show me your numbers. Naruto looked at his number. He had 6. He looked at the others. Neji had 7. Gaara had 5. Shino had 2. Kankuro had 4. Shikamaru had 3. Dosu had 1. And Tamari had 8. That meant Sasuke would have number 9 as he had never come back when he had left with Kakashi. Looks like Sensei already left, thought Naruto as he saw Kakashi was no longer in the room. The matches will be Dosu vs Shino, Shikamaru vs Kankuro, Gaara vs Naruto, Neji vs Tamari. The winner of the final fight will go against Sasuke to see who moves on to the next round. The third statement made both Tamari and Neji look angry as they had to potentially fight one more opponent to reach the first round. You have a month to train, do not waste the opportunity. The third left and soon the Anbu led them all out of the forest and in 2 hours everyone made it out and went their own way. Ino ran towards Naruto who was already leaving. Hey, Naruto, don't you remember? You promised to tell me what happened. Naruto cursed inwardly as he was already tired and just wanted to go home and rest. Fine. Ino looked happy. But not here. Ino's face dropped. If not here then where? Her voice was irritated. My house. Ino's face was red, though Naruto couldn't tell if it was because of anger or embarrassment. There is no way I'm going to your house. Naruto looked calmly at Ino. Then I guess you don't want to know what happened. Ino bit her lip and sighed. Fine, but no funny business, Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes and made his way to his favorite food stand with Ino on his heels. Ino noticed how some of the villagers would glare at Naruto behind his back. Wait, what are we doing here? I haven't eaten a decent meal in a week and I'm taking some home. I don't feel like cooking tonight. Naruto's response completely floored Ino. You can cook. Naruto stopped and looked at his fellow blonde. Ino, I've been living by myself since I was 6. Of course I know how to cook. Ino stopped walking for a second before following the other blonde. Do you want something, Ino? Ino snapped out of her thoughts and she noticed they had made it to their destination. Ino stopped her instant refusal. She, like Naruto, hadn't eaten in a week, so she said yes before remembering she didn't have any money. Naruto just shook his head. Don't worry about it, I got it covered. I'll be back soon. Naruto walked into the stand and soon came out with 2 containers. It took another 20 minutes of walking before making it to Naruto's apartment. Ino noticed he lived in one of the more run-down parts of town. Well, here we are. Naruto said as he opened the door. Ino looked around and saw a kitchen-living room combo and 2 doors, one she was assuming was to the bathroom and his bedroom. The apartment was sparsely decorated with a single worn couch in front of an older TV. There was a table with 2 chairs in the kitchen area. You only have 2 chairs? Ino's question had come out before she could stop herself. Naruto had set the containers down on the table as he pulled out bowls and chopsticks. I don't really need more than that. You're actually the first person to come in here who isn't old man Hokage. Ino always forgot the close relation her fellow blonde had with their Hokage. Ino sat in one of the chairs and they ate dinner in silence. When they were done, Ino finally asked Naruto what happened. The whiskered blonde took a deep breath before answering. We were attacked by Orochimaru. Ino let out a gasp. He blew me away with a massive wind jutsu and I had to deal with a snake summon before I could make my way back to help the others. He just toyed with us until he placed a seal on me that messed with my chakra. Then he brought out this weird sword and was about to hit Sasuke with it when he substituted with me. Ino spoke out in defense of the Uchiha. There's no way Sasuke would do that. Why would I lie, Ino? Naruto's even tone caught her flat-footed and she involuntarily glanced at his chest where she knew his scar lay. Ino sat quietly, unable to comprehend how someone could use a comrade like that. He bit Sasuke and left. I'm pretty sure those weird markings are his doing. He has a mark where he bit him. Then Sakura abandoned me in the forest, where I bleed out for a while until I managed to close the wound. Both blondes sat in the kitchen, the street lights outside already on as the sun had gone out. Come on, Ino, I'll walk you home, it's already late. Ino looked up and simply nodded. Wait, what about the seal on your stomach? Did you get it removed? Said Ino. I got the seal he placed on me removed. The third took care of it when I went to go get treated after my match. The 2 blondes left and Ino once again noticed some people who glared at her fellow blonde. They all looked away when Naruto glared back. Why do they glare at you? Did you pull a prank on all of them? Naruto looked at Ino. I might tell you some other day. I've reached my limit for sharing for a day. Soon the 2 blondes reached the Yamanaka flower shop as it acted as the front entrance to their clan compound. I'll see you around, Ino. Naruto turned and walked back to his home, but he heard Ino mutter. Thanks for walking me home, Naruto. The blonde quickly took to the roofs and made his way home, where he showered and got in bed. I need to talk to Kakashi to see if he's actually going to train me. Naruto let out a small snort. Probably not. I need to go to the old man and see if he has anything that could help with my training. I need to work on my jutsu arsenal and my fighting style. The shadow clones will help speed things up. I need to really step up my training to deal with Gaara. He then put a hand on his stomach. I need to get stronger. With that final thought, Naruto went to sleep. Naruto woke up early in the morning and began his early morning rituals. Once he was finished, he made 2 clones, one to go look for Kakashi and the other to go buy supplies he was short on in his home. He told his clone to check the hospital where Sasuke would be staying, as that was the best bet to find his team sensei. Naruto started making his way to the Hokage Tower to see if the old man could help him with something specific. He took his time admiring the early machinations of the village. He ended up walking by an orphanage and saw the kids playing in the jungle gym nearby. He felt a pang of sympathy and decided he could spare some time to play with some of the kids who looked downtrodden. It's not like the Hokage is going anywhere. The air in the hospital was stale. Man, boss is so lucky he doesn't have to be here. The clone of Naruto had been waiting for half an hour. He had seen his teammate come by looking like she had been crying with a bouquet of flowers. She had not acknowledged him and he was fine with that too. It was then that he had seen Kakashi walk in, his famous orange book in hand. "Hello Naruto, here to see Sasuke." Kakashi's tone was almost lazy. "No, I came here for you. I was wonder." Naruto was cut off by Kakashi. "I know what you're going to ask, Naruto, and I am sorry. I'm already planning on training Sasuke for the month. I don't have time to help you too." Kakashi looked up from his book. "Honestly, you should forfeit the match, Naruto. Gaara could kill you and I don't think you're ready yet." "Yeah, boss, figured you would say that." Kakashi looked startled as his student popped. Naruto had just was making his way up to the Hokage's office when the memory of his clones hit him. The blonde just sighed sadly as he felt a pang in his chest. He was expecting Kakashi to blow him off for Sasuke. He had not expected him to tell him to give up. That stung. He had already talked to the receptionist and after a 5-minute wait, he was called in. "Hello Naruto, how are you?" The third's voice was always calming to Naruto. It was the one constant he had in his life. "I'm doing okay, but I need your help, old man." The third simply nodded, signifying the blonde should continue. "Can you help me learn the 5-element seal counter? The seal completely messed up my chakra. I need to be able to remove it if I ever get hit by it again." The third took a moment to study the blonde before he nodded. "The easiest way to learn the counter is to learn the technique." The third reached down into his drawer and pulled out a book about the same size as Kakashi's makeout tactics. "This is a book on beginner level Fuinjutsu. If you can read this book and master the basics in here, I can help you learn the 5-element sealing technique." The third handed the book to Naruto, who glanced at the title, Fuinjutsu for Dummies by Tobarama Senju, before he skimmed it. From what he could see, it was a lot of theory and penmanship practice along with explaining how symbols interact with each other. "Thanks, old man," Naruto said with a smile. "So do you have a training schedule for the month yet?" The third questioned the blonde. Naruto let out a frown. "Yeah, I'm going to hit the archives and see if I can learn some more jutsus, while my clones work on them and more chakra control. I'm going to be working on my speed." The third let out a small smile. "It sounds like Kakashi is taking full advantage of your shadow clones to train you." Naruto shook his head. "No, Kakashi isn't training me this month. He's too busy with Sasuke." The third also frowned, before inhaling with his pipe. "Naruto, do you know your nature affinity?" The third sighed when he saw the blonde look at him in pure confusion. "Naruto, nature affinities determine what elemental jutsu you are most suited to." "Does that mean if I have a fire affinity I can't learn any other jutsu other than fire style?" The third smiled at Naruto, remembering his days as a sensei. "No, it just means fire style will be the easiest for you to learn." "What nature element were you planning on learning?" Naruto looked at the third with determination blazing in his eyes. "All of them." The third Hokage choked as he inhaled too quickly on his pipe. "Are you sure about that, my boy? Mastering all the elements is incredibly difficult." Naruto looked out the window to the village below before answering. "I know, but the man I respect the most did it and I want to follow in his footsteps." The third looked confused. The fourth wasn't known for using all the elements. Naruto looked back towards the third. "I know, but you are." The third looked confused, contemplating the young blonde's answer. "I thought the fourth was your favorite Hokage." Naruto looked down before speaking in a quiet voice. "He's my favorite hero. He was always a fictional character in my mind, a perfect image to strive for." Naruto paused and the third kept his entire focus on the blonde. "I grew up hearing stories of him, but all those mean nothing to the impact you've had. I've always looked up to you. You gave me hope when things were at their darkest. I could always count on you to be there for me even though you're so busy with the village. I want to be Hokage not to acknowledge but because I want to be what you are to me and so many other people. I want to be the pillar people depend on when they can't go on anymore. I don't know when I lost myself or my goal, but I need to get stronger to protect you and this village you've sacrificed so much for. Naruto had turned away from the third during his speech and he missed the single tear that ran down his cheek. The third cleared his eyes and went over to the blonde to give him a hug. The two stayed like that for a moment before the third moved back to his chair. He then reached into his drawer again and pulled out a scroll and a piece of paper. Well, I can't train you personally, but I think I can help you move in the right direction. Push your chakra into this. The third handed Naruto the piece of paper. As soon as the blonde channeled chakra through the paper is split in two with a part of the paper crumbling to dust. Well, it looks like you have a wind affinity with a minor earth one. Wind is the most offensive element with earth being the most defensive. The third started writing in the scroll and 5 minutes later he handed that to the blonde as well. I wrote a jutsu for each element except for your nature affinities. I put down 2 for each along with the body flicker jutsu and a variation of the shadow clone I invented. It's called the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu and it works just like the Shadow Clone Jutsu except it does it to your shuriken as the name suggests. As for the body flicker, I saw you've been using a bastardized version when you move, so those 2 shouldn't give you too much trouble. You'll also notice I gave you another chakra control exercise in there along the basic ways to train your affinities. Promise me you'll be careful when you're out there training Naruto. Naruto tackled the third and whispered a quiet thank you, his voice flush with emotion. The third patted his head and held him. The blonde let him go and looked him straight in the eye. I won't let you down, old man. I know you won't, Naruto. The blonde left the office full of determination. He made his way to a popular store that sold ninja gear. My jumpsuit is ruined, might as well get a new outfit. He barely paid attention to the sales girl as he picked up some black pants along with a dark green shirt. He then noticed the store had a burnt orange short-sleeved hooded jacket. The final items he picked up were some dark brown ninja sandals and a new black cloth for his headband. He made a clone that took his new purchases home and gave him the book on sealing, telling him to get started reading it. He made his way to training ground 7 and quickly pulled out the scroll the third had given him as he saw the list of jutsu along with a note. Naruto, here is the list of jutsu for each of the elements. Earth style. Practice brick jutsu D rank hand seals. Ram right pointing arrow, tiger right pointing arrow, snake right pointing arrow, dog right pointing arrow, rat right pointing arrow, ox right pointing arrow, horse right pointing arrow, rabbit right pointing arrow, tiger right pointing arrow, boar right pointing arrow, snake. Creates a weak wall made of earth, perfect for learning earth style. Learn before mud wall. Earth style. Mud wall jutsu B rank hand seals. Tiger right pointing arrow, hare right pointing arrow, dog. Creates a strong earth wall, can be used by spitting out mud user creates or using pre-existing earth. Hardness varies depending on the chakra used. Wind style. Breakthrough jutsu D rank hand seals. Dog right pointing arrow, horse right pointing arrow, bird. The user gathers wind chakra in their stomach and releases a strong gust of wind that can knock people away. Learn before great breakthrough. Wind style. Great breakthrough jutsu C rank hand seals. Tiger right pointing arrow, ox right pointing arrow, dog right pointing arrow, rabbit right pointing arrow, snake. The user breathes wind out of the mouth. The power varies depending on the skill of user and amount of chakra used. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu C rank hand seals. Snake right pointing arrow, ram right pointing arrow, monkey right pointing arrow, boar right pointing arrow, horse right pointing arrow, tiger. User turns chakra into fire inside their body and releases it in a giant ball. The more chakra used, the more fire produced. Water style. Raging waves jutsu C rank hand seals. Dragon right pointing arrow, tiger right pointing arrow, hare. The user spits out a large amount of water from their mouth with enough pressure to knock human targets away. Amount changes with chakra used. Lightning style. Electromagnetic murder jutsu, C rank hand seals. Boar right pointing arrow, ram right pointing arrow, snake right pointing arrow, horse right pointing arrow, dragon. The user gathers lightning chakra into their hands that surges forward when touching the ground. Power varies from small shock to lethal dosage with the amount of chakra used. You can practice basic nature transformation by grabbing a leaf to channel the element. For wind, you need to split the leaf with your chakra. For earth, you need to take a leaf and dry it out with earth chakra. For fire, you need to burn the leaf. For water, you need to make the leaf soggy, and for lightning, you must make the leaf curl into itself. Here are the other two jutsu you can learn. Eventually, you will be able to tell the difference in the elemental chakra, that is the main goal. As you progress, try to imagine the element you are trying to channel in your mind. Ninja arts. Shuriken shadow clone jutsu, A rank hand seals. Ox right pointing arrow, dog right pointing arrow, dragon right pointing arrow, rat right pointing arrow, dog right pointing arrow, boar right pointing arrow, snake right pointing arrow, tiger. The user uses their chakra to clone an object that is thrown. This jutsu works for kunai and other thrown projectiles. Ninja arts. Body flicker, D rank hand seals, tiger. The user floods the body with chakra to temporarily vitalize themselves to move at an incredibly high speed. There is another chakra control exercise you can learn called water walking. It is like the tree climbing you already learned on your mission to wave, but much harder, as you must constantly change the amount of chakra flowing to your feet. I hope this helps you achieve your goals, Naruto. I will always believe in you. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. P.S. Try combining jutsu together. Naruto made 30 clones and separated them into groups of 5, and each group went to work on a nature transformation and water walking. He made another 10 clones and had them spare with him and help him with more physical exercises. Naruto had worked till sundown, where he started popping his clones and got their memories back. He had made some progress with water walking. Wind and earth nature transformation was going at a decent pace compared to the other elements, but he had made minimal progress. Well, he did say it was going to be difficult. Naruto made his way home to rest. Naruto spent the first week honing his chakra control. He had upped his clones to 40 a day. On the second day, he made the new clones work on the body flicker and the shadow shuriken jutsus, and by the 5th day he had managed to occasionally sense the difference between each of the elements. Each day he drove himself into the ground with physical exercise, and he had started sparring with 10 clones at a time to help him sharpen his instincts. He would look for a style, but it would go against his free-flowing nature. Tomorrow Naruto would start the new week and have his clones move on to practicing the jutsus themselves. Naruto was currently walking home from another grueling day of training, reading the book the third gave him. He had made sure to make an additional clone before he began training to read the book while he trained. Naruto was pulled out of his reading by the voice of his female teammate. "What? Are you trying to copy Kakashi-sensei now, Naruto?" Naruto looked up from his book to see both Ino and Sakura standing in front of him. "No, I just can't waste any time if I want to finish this before the month is up." Naruto noticed it. They were coming from the direction of his apartment. "Why are you guys in this part of town?" Ino took the chance to speak up. "Well, Forehead and I have been trying to find you to see if you needed any help with training. We heard how Kakashi-sensei took Sasuke away for the month to train." She then turned to Sakura and made a go-ahead motion. "Yeah, I also wanted to take this as an opportunity to make up for what happened in the forest." Sakura had pure sincerity in her voice. Naruto took a moment before answering. He was still mad at his team, but he didn't like holding grudges, so he would take the olive branch. "Not that I'm going to forget what happened," thought Naruto. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't think you can help me train." Ino and Sakura looked offended. Naruto, seeing the looks, explained. Unless you guys can help me with my nature transformation, you really can't do much aside from some sparring. Both girls quickly lost their looks of anger and replaced them looks of wonder. You're doing nature transformation training. What are your elements? Ino's asked the question both she and Sakura wanted to ask. Ino, I'm not going to tell you. If Shikamaru wins his match, he's going to be my opponent in the next round. Naruto's answer brought Ino down before she nodded reluctantly. Sakura looked at the book with interest. Well, maybe we can help you with whatever it is you're reading. Sakura's suggestion was then met with an irate Ino. Wait a moment, you're not reading anything like what Kakashi reads, are you, Naruto? Sakura blushed a deep crimson as her earlier words came back to her. Naruto sighed to himself as he showed the book to the girls, trying to avoid the explosion of anger that was Ino and Sakura. No, it's a book on Fuinjutsu. I'm trying to learn the technique that he used on me, so if I ever get hit with it again I can remove it myself. Sakura looked at the book and whistled at how complex it is. This is really complex, how can you understand it? Sakura backpedaled. That came out wrong. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, most of it just kinda clicks for me. It's kinda like building a puzzle. Naruto, seeing he was already late, decided to head home. Anyway, I need to head home, I'll see you guys later. With a speedy goodbye, the trio made their way home. Naruto entered his home and saw a scroll on his table. He made a clone and he opened the scroll. Once he saw it was safe, he popped the clone and took the scroll. Naruto, please come to my office tomorrow around noon. I have a person who wants to meet you, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. Naruto set the scroll down and did his evening rituals before going to bed, where he got into a meditative pose and began feeling his chakra. Naruto found himself in a familiar sewer. So you've come back. Naruto looked at the massive nine-tailed fox that was sealed in his stomach. I wanted to speak with you. I wanted to thank you for your advice when we last met. The fox looked at his container. Don't bother, I simply couldn't allow you to make such a fool of yourself out there. Naruto sat down and stared at the fox. I never introduced myself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. Naruto smiled at the big fox, who exhaled and blew the blonde onto his back. You've already proven yourself far more polite than many of your kind. Now be gone, you've picked up an annoying habit of interrupting my sleep. Naruto nodded and found himself back in his room. Naruto went to the training ground and made 51 clones. 5 groups of 5 would work on the elemental jutsu, 10 would work finishing the body flicker and the shuriken shadow clone jutsu. He would have the rest working on hand seal speed and calligraphy, plus the 1 clone who would continue reading the book. It was nearing noon when Naruto stopped his own workout and he started making his way to the Hokage's office. He went in and saw the third sitting in his chair while a white-haired ninja stood behind him. Hello Naruto, the third was cut off as the white-haired man jumped forward and exploded into smoke. When the smoke cleared, he was standing on a big toad. I am known all throughout the land, ladies wish to be with me while men curse my name in envy. I am the legendary sage of Mount Myoboku. The great toad sage Jiraiya. Naruto stared at the old man for a solid 20 seconds before looking at the third. Sue, why did you want to talk to me? Jiraiya face faulted before jumping back to his feet. Jiraiya and I were discussing the Chunin exams and you were brought up. He has offered to train you for the rest of the month. The third turned to Jiraiya, who nodded. That's right. Be amazed at my great generosity. Naruto looked at the strange man. What are you going to teach me? Jiraiya looked at the blonde with a serious face. Have you ever felt like you had another cha? Naruto knew where he was going and interrupted him with an annoyed face. I know about the 9 tails. And if that's all you're going to teach me, then I refuse. Jiraiya had a grim face. Listen kid, the chakra of the 9 tails is a great tool, you can't just ignore it. Naruto scowled. I won't, but the 9 tails chakra is just that, a tool. No matter how powerful it is, if I'm not strong enough on my own, then it's useless. Jiraiya was about to respond but was stopped by the third. He's right, Jiraiya, if you plan on only training him on using the fox's chakra, then he's better off following his own training schedule. Jiraiya let out a sigh before nodding, then he looked up with an energetic aura. Alright, well, how about I teach you the summoning jutsu? I hold the contract for the toads. Naruto thought about it for a second before responding. What can I do with that? The toads are some of the best summons in the world. There are many uses for them, from sending long-range messages to summoning giant battle toads to help you in combat. Naruto contemplated the offer that did sound pretty amazing, not to mention versatile. Alright, you have a deal. Great. Let's go then. No sense in wasting time. The blonde nodded to the Jiraiya and the two left with a quick goodbye to the third, who told Naruto to come by at 8 so he could help him begin to learn the 5-element seal. The two made it to the outskirts of the village and to a very obscure training ground. Okay kid, first things first, you have to sign your name here in the summoning contract. Whenever you want to summon a toad, you have to sacrifice a bit of blood. Jiraiya bit his thumb and ran through some hand seals before slamming his hand on the ground and a dog-sized toad. The toad then went up in smoke as it disappeared. Jiraiya reached behind him and pulled out his big scroll. Just sign your name in blood and we can begin training. Naruto bit his thumb like he had seen Jiraiya do and wrote his name. So the fourth also signed with the toads. Naruto had noticed the name Minato Namikaze in the middle of his newly made name and that of Jiraiya's. Good. The hand signs for the summoning contract are boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. Naruto took a moment to memorize the seals before biting his thumb again and going through the seals and pouring a bit of chakra into it. Summoning jutsu. There was a cloud of smoke, and when it cleared, it showed a small orange toad wearing a blue vest. Yo, my name Gamakichi. Naruto looked at the small toad with a raised eyebrow. Hello, name's Naruto Uzumaki. I just signed the toad contract. The small toad nodded along. Nice to meet ya. You're lucky I came and not my brother, he would have annoyed you until you gave him something to eat. Naruto nodded. That would have been troublesome, he didn't really feel like going back to town to get food. Anyway, I'll let Pops know we have a new summoner, later. With that, Gamakichi left. Good, you did surprisingly well for your first time. How much chakra did you use? I used about the same amount as I do when I summon 2 shadow clones. Jiraiya nodded. Alright, let's see what you can summon. This time I want you to use as much chakra as possible. Jiraiya jumped back slightly. Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated as he started gathering a large amount of chakra. He performed the jutsu and a massive pillar of smoke could be seen. Jiraiya, why the hell did you summon me, you old fool? When the smoke cleared, a gigantic rust-red toad with a scar over his left eye could be seen. He was wearing a blue vest and carried a large blade on his waist. He was smoking a large pipe that was hanging from his mouth. Naruto, who was on top of his head, jumped down to his nose as he looked at the toad he had summoned. He's almost as big as the 9 tails, thought Naruto. Who are you? The red toad spoke. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm the new summoner of the toad contract. I was practicing to see what the biggest toad I could summon was. The toad looked at the blonde before letting out a laugh. Ha, as if a little pipsqueak like you could summon me. Naruto looked annoyed and simply jumped off the toad as he bit his thumb and ran through the hand seals again, only this time he didn't hold back and was rewarded with a small poof of smoke. Naruto was breathing heavily from the amount of chakra he had used. That's weird, I used a lot of chakra. Naruto thought as he heard the big toad laugh. His laughter died off and was replaced with a look of shock when he saw the small old-looking green toad wearing a gray cloak. The small toad looked around and quickly saw his new blonde summoner. Why hello there, young tadpole. I had sensed we had a new summoner, but how did you summon me? Naruto, seeing both the giant toad's shocked face along with Jiraiya as he fell from the tree he was hiding in, assumed the toad in front of him was important. It did help that his instincts were screaming at him that the small toad could kick his ass better than the walking mountain. I don't know, I summoned the big one behind you and a smaller toad named Gamakichi earlier. I told Gamakichi I was the new summoner, but the big one didn't believe me, so I was gonna summon another big toad and you appeared. The green toad nodded. I see, you must have a lot of chakra then. Naruto nodded. He was often told how much chakra he had and how much he wasted. He had been using every trick he knew old and new to help him perfect his control. Yes, I have been told I have one of the biggest chakra pools in the village. Well, my name is Fukasaku, but most people call me Pa, and I am one of the two great toad sages of Mount Myoboku, the other being my wife Shima. The big one behind me is Gamabunta, the current head of the Toad clan. When you gain a bit more experience with fighting alongside us, summon me again, there is much I could teach you. Fukasaku turned to Gamabunta. And you, Bunta boy, don't be so impolite, I can't believe you haven't even introduced yourself yet. The now named Gamabunta nodded before offering a small apology. We'll be seeing you, tadpole. Don't hesitate to call on us if you ever need help. With his parting words, both toads left. It was a very quiet Jiraiya that was left with Naruto. I can't believe you managed to summon Pa. Naruto just shook his head, and the two spent the rest of the day by summoning various other toads and how they could be used in combat. Jiraiya also demonstrated how they could do collaboration jutsu with them. The blonde spent the next 2 weeks working on his other jutsu along with his chakra control and his hand seal speed. Every other day he would go to the third and practice the 5-element seal. Naruto spent the last week training to see how to best use his newly acquired arsenal in a fight and working with certain toads on combination jutsus. He also spent time polishing everything he knew had learned. He had also discovered on complete accident that if he flooded his arm with earth chakra it would turn black and he could easily punch through trees. Naruto had made some pretty devastating attacks when combining certain jutsus together. It got worse when he added the toads and their ability to use water-style jutsu along with being able to spit out oil. The day of the finals, Naruto put on his new gear. The dark green shirt matched well with his burnt orange hoodie that he kept unzipped. His new black headband cloth was longer than his old blue one and his new black pants had more pockets. Naruto walked calmly to the arena and saw the stands were already full. He was the third last to arrive with both the sound ninja Dosu and his teammate Sasuke missing. He looked to the crowd and managed to see most of his once classmates were sitting together. He saw a Jonin with a bandana and long brown bangs. He was chewing on a senbon. Soon the arena quieted as the third sat up from his chair in the viewing booth alongside the cage. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming to the finals of the Chunin exams. The crowd roared as the third raised his hands in showmanship. Here we go, thought Naruto as he felt the air buzz with excitement as the finals began.